So that's what you're waiting for, help. A hand from above, maybe. A miracle wrapped in golden timing. You're sitting there with your mess, with your broken promises, with the very rules you shattered still echoing off the walls, and you're waiting for help. But here's the thing, what if help's not missing? What if it's withheld? Not out of cruelty, no, but out of justice, out of truth. Because why would anyone, even the divine, pour water into a cup that refuses to stop leaking? They say silence is golden, but this silence, it's a statement. Not the peaceful kind, not the meditative, birds chirping, yoga mat kind. No, this silence screams louder than thunder. You beg, you plead, you fast, you cry, oh you cry like heaven owes you something. But nothing changes, not a flicker, not a whisper, just stillness. And deep inside, it's not that help isn't coming. It's waiting, not absent, just restrained. Like a parent holding back what their child isn't ready for because the lesson's still burning hot on the stove. See, people have gotten used to treating God like a vending machine. Punch in a prayer, press a few tears, out pops the blessing. But what if the machine's unplugged because you skipped the part where you were supposed to listen? Not just hear, listen. You remember the moment you were told not to go there, not to say that, not to entertain what you called just for fun. And yet, here you are, confused why your help feels delayed. It's not punishment, it's precision. Because a gift in the hands of someone who won't obey, that's not help. That's ammo for self-destruction. And let's talk about discipline, shall we? People run from that word like it's got teeth. Discipline's not sexy. Doesn't look good on Instagram. Doesn't trend. But it's the difference between chaos and purpose. Without it, you become a slave to your own impulses, chained up by your own emotions. You want help, but you won't stop doing the thing that's been poisoning you in the first place. That's like asking for healing with a knife still in your hand. How can anyone patch the wound if you're too stubborn to drop the blade? But no, obedience isn't fun, it's inconvenient. It interrupts the show you like. It messes with your schedule. It tells you to delete numbers you still like texting. It tells you to walk away while your feelings still want to stay. And then people say, God knows my heart. Oh, he does. That's the problem. He knows you can obey, but you won't. He knows the delays in your life aren't about the enemy. They're about your disobedience being louder than your faith. Delayed help. That's what this is. Not a no. Not a goodbye. Just a holy pause. Like a powerful hand in midair, ready to move, but waiting for you to move first. Waiting for that one thing, that small yes, that choice you've been dodging because it costs too much. The kind of obedience that burns, that breaks attachments, that rips comfort right out of your hands. And yet, that's the price. Because what's on the other side of obedience? Clarity, power, access. But you don't get that without the pain of rebellion. Sweet, stylish, perfectly filtered rebellion. Not the kind that storms buildings or breaks laws, but the quiet kind. The pretty kind. The kind that hides behind just being human. You know the one. It looks like compromise. Feels like convenience. Smells like freedom, but tastes like rust when it hits your soul. And then people wonder, why isn't God showing up? As if alignment and rebellion can share a bed. As if you can walk north while running south and still expect to arrive at the gates of glory. It's hilarious, isn't it? How people think they can twist the arm of the divine with loud prayers and louder complaints, while ignoring every boundary he set. But I'm doing my best, they say, as if partial obedience is a get-out-of-chaos-free card. As if deliberate rebellion can be dressed up in excuses and still pass inspection. But here's the punchline: alignment requires sacrifice. Obedience isn't just about saying yes, it's about killing the no you've been feeding behind the scenes. And rebellion, it doesn't always wear black. Sometimes it wears a smile. Sometimes it sings in church. Sometimes it volunteers on weekends. And still deep down it's rot disguised in dangerous sea. The problem isn't that people don't know what to do. It's that they don't want to do it. They wait for a new instruction because the last one was too heavy, too personal, too uncomfortable. So they stall, pretend, call it confusion. But confusion is often just disobedience in disguise. They know what was said. They know it needs to go. But they delay. Delay long enough. And the help you're begging for pulls back not out of hate, but out of mercy. Because if he helps you while you're still aligned with rebellion, that help becomes fuel for a bigger fall. You want presence without obedience. That's not alignment, that's delusion. That's thinking you can host the holy while entertaining what's profane. That you can keep your feet in hell and still expect heaven to sponsor your journey. And the saddest part, most people don't even realize they're off track. Because rebellion is subtle. It's that almost decision. That 90% surrender. That I'll do it when I'm ready. But the promise doesn't wait for your comfort. The instruction wasn't a suggestion. And alignment doesn't bend for convenience, so now you're stuck. Asking why doors won't open, why peace won't stay, why your prayers bounce back like rubber bullets. It's not an attack. It's not a curse. It's the echo of your own decisions dressed up in spiritual confusion. Because the divine doesn't co-sign rebellion, and help doesn't arrive where holiness has been evicted. You can't receive a word for your future while still holding hands with what's killing you in the present. It's oil and water, fire and ice. You either choose surrender or you settle for silence, but silence isn't the worst part. No, the worst part is the delay that looks like peace. When everything still seems fine, but inside you're bleeding. Inside, the conviction is eating away at your sleep. Yet still you stay, you stall, you act confused, but you're not, You'd always known. The rebellion wasn't an accident. It was a decision. A choice. And now the hand that could have helped is waiting not because it's weak, but because it refuses to reward your rebellion with rescue. Not until you realign. Not until you stop expecting heaven to serve a heart still loyal to hell. Funny how people love to claim they're obedient when the task is easy. When it makes them look good. When it fits their little calendar of convenience. But when the instruction feels like death, when it costs too much, when it drags you away from everything that stroked your ego, suddenly silence. Suddenly they're philosophers asking, what is obedience really? Suddenly they want to negotiate with a God that never stuttered when he gave the command in the first place. Partial obedience, oh, it's a masterpiece of modern religion. It's got structure, it's got rhythm, it even sings. Looks holy, sounds deep, feels spiritual. But it's poison dressed like progress. It's the trapdoor beneath your own declarations of faith. You gave him 90% and kept the 10% that made you feel in control. But that 10%, that's where the infection hides. That's where your delay lives. That's where the promise dies slow, not because God changed his mind, but because you never fully changed yours. People don't want full surrender. They want collaboration, a deal, a handshake, a little bargain with the Almighty. I'll stop this, but let me keep that. I'll walk away from him, but don't touch my pride. I'll forgive her, but don't ask me to forget. They want control with a side of conviction. They want obedience without the inconvenience. But the deal was never 50/50. It was all or nothing. And partial obedience, it's nothing. Dressed in a costume of something. It's delayed destruction wrapped in church clothes, see? When you obey partially, you disobey completely. There's no in-between with truth. It doesn't accept fractions, it doesn't play fair. Truth slices right through the fluff, the justifications, the I'm not ready yet nonsense. You either dropped the idol or you didn't. You either cut the tie or you held it behind your back like a guilty child who thinks they're clever. And yet you still wonder why things aren't moving, why the storm won't pass, why the fire won't die down. It's because that little leftover rebellion is still loud enough to cancel out the obedience you performed for the cameras. Oh, and how people perform. They love public obedience, love to post it, preach it, quote it. It's the private rebellion that kills them. The part no one sees, the thoughts they feed, the habits they hide. They'll shout, "Yes, Lord," in the sanctuary and whisper, "Not yet," in the hallway. They treat conviction like a suggestion. They treat timing like a toy. And then they act surprised when heaven doesn't move. But heaven doesn't move for almost. Heaven doesn't open for almost. Heaven requires all. And it knows when you're lying, so they sit and wait and call it a season of testing. But sometimes it's not a test, it's a timeout. Because partial obedience doesn't earn access, it delays it. And while you play pretend with your half-finished surrender, the help you're praying for is standing by like a surgeon for the patient to stop moving. But you won't stay still, you won't let go. You're still negotiating. Still trying to figure out how to have both the blessing and the behavior that broke you in the first place. And the worst part, deep down, you know what part you didn't obey. You know what instruction you diluted. You know what you held back, hoping it wouldn't matter. But it does. It always does, because heaven counts what you hope it overlooks. It weighs the parts you hide. It audits your almost. And until you close the gap between what you say and what you live, you'll keep wondering why the help never lands, why the peace never stays, why the next step always feels like a cliff instead of a staircase. Because obedience isn't about what's easy, it's about what's exact. And partial obedience is still, they always say, trust the process. Oh, how poetic, how clean, how digestible. But what they never mention is the command you skipped 5 months ago. The one you heard loud and clear but pretended you didn't. The one that didn't fit your mood or your timeline. The one that made you uncomfortable, so you labeled it confusion, or maybe it wasn't God, right? That instruction you ignored, that was the door. The door to everything you've been begging for, crying for, fasting for, pretending to be patient for. And you missed it not because you couldn't hear it, but because you didn't like it. Oh, don't we love options? Choices, flexibility, plan A, plan B, and a few emergency exits just in case. But the divine doesn't operate like a buffet. It's not multiple choice. It's not tailored to your mood swings or your childhood trauma. It's command. Clear, sharp, brutal even. And when he said move, he meant then. Not after your feelings caught up. Not after your friends gave you approval. Not after the horoscope matched the message. He said move, and you hesitated. You hesitated because the instruction came dressed in discomfort. And you only obey when the task feels like a compliment. Now you're stuck in a loop, round and round. Asking for signs, looking for confirmation, scrolling through quotes, pretending one of them will be the green light he already gave. But you don't need a new word. You need to go back to the last one and do it. No shortcuts, no filters. Just raw, ugly, violent obedience. The kind that makes your palms sweat. The kind that rips you away from everything safe. But that's the key. That's the test. That's the divine design. To see if you'll obey when it doesn't feel good, when one claps for you. When it doesn't make any sense, you ignored the instruction because you wanted something more glamorous, something dramatic. You wanted lightning bolts and angels singing. But sometimes the most important command comes as a whisper in the middle of your mess. Comes as a subtle nudge, a push that feels like betrayal because it's asking you to destroy your comfort zone. And let's be honest, you didn't want to let it go. The habit, the person, the plan. You didn't want to walk away, so you said, I'll pray about it, which is just code for I'm not ready to obey. Now here you are asking for help, screaming into the heavens, wondering why nothing's moving, why everything feels dry. But help doesn't come when obedience is still pending. Help doesn't rush in when you've ghosted the last command. This isn't about punishment. It's about order, alignment. You don't get access without accuracy. And accuracy means doing exactly what you were told, exactly when you were told. No edits, no delays. No diluted versions that fit your vibe. See, the delay isn't demonic. It's not even circumstantial. It's disobedience in a nice outfit. It's rebellion that learned to smile. You think you're waiting on God, but really He's waiting on you to finally realize that the key you lost wasn't stolen. You just threw it away because you didn't like the shape of it, because it didn't look like favor, because it looked like sacrifice, because it felt like death to your ego. And that's the point, that's the secret nobody wants to admit. Obedience hurts. It costs. It pulls things out of you that you swore you needed. And if it doesn't, you probably didn't obey fully, so go ahead. Keep asking for a miracle. Keep dancing around the altar, hoping the delay will magically lift. But deep down, you know the moment you chose convenience over instruction. The moment you talked yourself out of obedience and dressed it up as wisdom. But what if your miracle's not missing? What if it's just waiting behind the thing you refuse to do? What if the command you dodged is still holding? Everything hostage, not out of cruelty, but out of caution. Because the divine won't fund your rebellion. It won't pour favor on disobedience. And it sure as hell won't co-sign a life built on they love to pretend it's just timing. That it's not disobedience, it's delay. I'm waiting on confirmation, they say, like the voice wasn't already loud enough to shake the bones inside their soul. Funny how people act deaf when the instruction doesn't stroke their pride. Suddenly everything's too unclear, too soon. No one ever questions the instruction when it promises comfort, but make it cost something, make it rip through their comfort zone like a blade, and suddenly they're philosophers again. Dissecting the command like it's a riddle instead of a directive. It's cute in a tragic sort of way. People begging for breakthrough while clutching the very thing that's blocking it. Pleading for peace while spoon-feeding chaos into their own bloodstream. You can't say yes and hold on to your no at the same time. You can't step into divine alignment while dragging rebellion like luggage. But they try. Oh, they try. And they get real good at it. Become artists of avoidance. Engineers of excuses. Masters at making stagnation look like strategy. But here's the truth, the ugly, bare, throat-clenching truth. The delay isn't holy. It's rebellion with better PR. You dressed it up in patience, but it's pride. You called it processing, but it's procrastination. And all the while the clock's ticking. Not in some dramatic end-of-the-world kind of way, but in that silent, creeping way where opportunities expire and you don't even notice expire. Until the room's empty and the light's gone cold. And you want to scream, why didn't it happen for me? But deep down, it was the yes you never gave. The go you never went. The door you stood in front of but never walked through. Because it didn't match your fantasy. See, people want elevation without obedience. They want reward without refinement. That obedience isn't just about doing, it's about doing it then. Not next month. Not when the anxiety goes away. Not when your bank account agrees. It's about surrender in the moment you hear it, not when it feels safe. But you waited. You sat on it. You buried it under logic, under comfort, under control. And now the blessing is on hold, not because it was taken, but because you haven't moved into position. This is where people get it twisted. They think obedience is optional. Like God's some gentle professor who gives you credit for effort. But this isn't school, this is war. This is a battlefield where precision saves lives. And you almost won't cut it. Heaven doesn't move for half obedience. Angels don't respond to negotiations. The kingdom doesn't bend around your fear. It moves with those who move when called, not when they feel like it. Not when they finish binge watching their doubt. Not when they've calculated all the risks and written a 5-year plan. And that's the part no one wants to hear. That your obedience doesn't just affect you, it affects the people connected to your assignment. That your silence delays someone else's freedom. That your stubbornness keeps someone else in bondage. This isn't just about your story, it's about every soul tied to your yes. And while you hesitate, they wait. While you stall, they suffer. And all because you couldn't surrender the part of the plan that made you uncomfortable, but it was never supposed to be comfortable. You think alignment feels like a spa day. No, it feels like surgery. It feels like dying to the version of yourself that never had the discipline to carry destiny. And you can't fake your way through it. You can't post your way around it. You can't spiritualize disobedience with long prayers and deep quotes. The only thing that counts is movement. Raw, unfiltered, terrifying movement in the direction he told you to go, even when your knees are shaking and your voice is cracking, because that's where the shift happens. Not when you feel ready. Not when you figured it all out, but when you obey anyway. When you do it scared. When you drop the excuse and pick up the weight, that's where favor finds you. That's where heaven opens. Not in your delay, not in your debate, but in your decision to finally, fully, without filters, just say,